60s and 70s activists used to complain that this was a cow town and there was nothing to do and you had to go to Washington. Some things haven't changed.
It's like, oh, that sounds familiar.
I don't know if I'd call it a cow town anymore.
No. It's not the smell that I can get when I walk out of my apartment with disagree.
Yeah, I noticed the other day they just like spread the slurry. I was driving home from Crow's Nest and I was like, I remember that smell.
Someone told me there was a fire in one of the BT barns containing a big pile of
It's
extra sticky.
Yeah, no, this smelled like slurry.
Okay.
I mean, there's that thing that happens like in the spring when we spray.
We're good?
Yeah.
All right. Welcome everyone. Looks like we've got a lively crowd today, very engaged, but we are going to go ahead and make a start with our presentation. I want to thank everyone for being here on Zoom and in person. My name is Paul Quigley, Director of the Center for Humanities, and this is the weekly meeting of the Center's seminar. And I'm really pleased this week we've got our GA for this year, actually, Sara Naghibizadeh, who is going to present on a project that the Center has been sponsoring for the last year or so called The Value of the Humanities. She's going to present some preliminary findings, and the project is ongoing, so we're especially eager to hear your feedback at the end. Whenever you're ready. Thanks.
Yeah, so hello all. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you for being here. I'm graduate assistant. I'm Sara, for those who don't know. So over the past year, we have been working on this project titled The Value of Humanities. But let me begin with a brief introduction. So about this question, why this project matter, why did we do it, and why should we continue? I think it would be fair if we say only the humanities are as a subject can ask a question like, what is the value of something? When we hear value, we think we are talking about economics, value added, appreciation, depreciation, etc. But really, value is a humanities question. What do we want to prioritize and on what basis? What are the ethics guiding such a basis? What are the politics behind our priorities? These are the questions the humanities bring to a term like value. The humanities operates on the belief that we can systematically work through these values just as rigorously as a scientist work through an equation. We are seeing the necessity of this rigorous evaluation right now. The question is inseparable from what we are seeing right now in the United States and around the globe. Our project itself, before I came here as a graduate assistant, was a consequences of this climate. When Paul and David applied for the grant, NIH grant, and it got frozen. So it is just one of many of examples that we are seeing today at the Virginia Tech and other institutions. This project then is an attempt to demonstrate the tangible impact of these humanities courses, particularly how they reach across disciplines to shape lives intellectually and professionally. So in today's presentation, I'm gonna focus on the attempts we had around a survey and oral history interviews. I'm going to share with you the result of the surveys we had. The surveys was about the students taking pathway courses using National Humanities Alliance Toolkit. And also, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the oral history project we are having right now. And this is a photo of me and Paul, obviously, that in the alumni tally gate. And it was one of our first attempts to understand what the themes we want to have around this question of value of humanities. So here you can see the overall structure of our survey in 4 steps. So step 1 was demographics, questions like class year, major, first generation, whether the students were first generation or not. And the step 2 was a skill assessment around 3 big kind of categories: intellectual, affective, and professional. The third kind of question was about identity and engagement, and the last question was impact reflection, a final assessment of personal transformation. We asked all instructors of courses in Pathway Concept 2, Critical Thinking in the Humanities, to encourage their students to complete it. And we came up with 105 overall participation. The majority were female and white, with a little bit of participation of international students. And also regarding who really is taking these surveys, regarding their majors, I would say across all 17 skills evaluated, the STEM students has an equal or greater number of participants compared to the non-STEM group. And participation usually split between 52 to 57 for the STEM group and 47 to 50 for the non-STEM groups. This is one of the one of the example of the question we asked regarding the intellectual skills. We asked students to rate from 1 to 5 about analytical skills, interpreting evidence, critiquing arguments, conceptual knowledge in the subject area, information literacy, such as finding, evaluating, citing sources, and versatility. And this is what we found out. Versatility here, which one of the examples of applying ideas across topics of context and conceptual knowledge, each received positive rating, which was 4 or 5 from over 61% of our participants. We also see there is a very low rating of, the blue one is a low rating of 1 and 2 is the red one. They are very low here. Similarly, we see in the affective skills the same pattern. And the most exciting finding here is the overwhelming positive response for openness to perspective, which received the highest rating of 5 from over half of respondents and the lowest combined negative rating at only about 2%. Similarly, empathy, perspective taking, which is like understanding experiences unlike your own, received positive rating from 83 of respondents. We are seeing in the civic engagement part a high press for applying ideas, real world, which has the highest combined positive rating at 64% and the lowest combined negative rating at just around 2 or 3%. Here we map the distribution across all 17 skills we measured. While the data here is broad, the standout metric here is the openness to perspective. It holds the highest proportion of positive responses across the entire set, which speaks volume about the role of these courses in the fostering an inclusive mindset. And I think we came up with like 3 areas intervention, if I say. We found out the key strength of these pathway courses are the affective skills in empathy and perspective taking, openness to perspective, and also the conceptual knowledge, which was the strongest intellectual skill. But we found out also a gap about the skills regarding teamwork and collaboration, with a really like kind of high, kind of low rating of 1 or 2. Also the same thing about professional relevance and civic participation. I would say these skills are fragmented in the sense that they are polarized. Rating are split almost evenly between low, neutral, and high, indicating inconsistent performance across the group. This was probably because some courses had a teamwork element while others didn't, but it's something that we can more reflect on. And also something like empathy heavily skewed toward top rating. Nearly 50% of responses gave a 5, signaling mastery. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about how STEM students really comprehend these humanities courses. There is a higher mean score in 16 of 17 assessed skills, demonstrating an overall stronger performance or higher self-assessment across most competencies. The single exception was about versatility, which was a very slight difference, as you can see in the chart. I guess one of the most interesting questions that we asked was about thinking about the time you spend in the class. How has your understanding of yourself and your relationship to the world changed, if at all? And there was no change response. There were no responses for the lowest score of 1, which was no change, indicating that every participant reported at least a minor change in their understanding. And you can see the same pattern in the chart, like visually. So this is the key finding of surveys, I would say. Universal impacts. 100% of our participants reported a shift in their worldview with moderate changes as the most frequent response. Empathy and perspective taking are the standout strengths, with 83% of students reporting high proficiency. A school related to teamwork and professional relevance showed the most significant room for the development. STEM students reported surprisingly high gains across nearly all 17 skills categories, particularly in community engagement. And this observation may suggest that STEM students are not getting those things in their other courses in comparison with humanities students. The data confirms that humanities courses are highly effective at building affective skills, emotional intelligence, alongside traditional intellectual knowledge. Also, I want to talk a little bit about alumni oral history. After my talk, maybe Eliza want to add something more because she is our graduate assistant who is working on oral history with alumni. We are exploring how participants perceive the value of humanities within their coursework, specifically looking at the impact on their career trajectories, professional and personal development, and their contribution to their communities. This is one of the quotes. We didn't transcribe all of the oral history we took, but this is one of the quotes we have for now. I remember so many professors and so many classes that had a huge impact on helping me learn how to think, helping me learn how to formulate arguments, helping me just enjoy the arts and enjoy the humanities. We also had another interviewee who was an engineer and talked about how he became more human-centered after and thinking in a more human way in what he's doing in his engineering work. So it's not a finished project, it's still going on. We're gonna have more surveys, we're gonna have more oral history interviews, we're gonna have institutional data analysis, broader alumni survey. We are thinking about how we want to disseminate results. So any feedback and any thoughts in that regard would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you want to involve in this project during this year or next academic year, please contact Dr. Quigley. And just that, yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation and the information. I'm sure we've got lots to talk about. And as Sara mentioned, we've got a couple of other people who might help in answering questions or provide an additional context. Eliza is in the room, our resident oral historian. And then on the Zoom, we've also got David Canola, who's a professor in the School of Education. And he's been collaborating on the project, bringing his expertise on the surveys, the data analysis piece of things, and the world of higher education in general. So we may call on you, David. Hopefully you don't mind too much if we get any questions that seem like they're in your area. But who wants to kick things off? I'm going to keep an eye on Zoom. If you've got a question on Zoom, feel free to raise your hand in the room. We could start with a question in here if anyone's got one. All right.
Right, thank you for the.
Yeah, it should be good.
Should be on. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. One thing I noticed is while I'm thrilled with the results of the survey, this room, of course, is somewhat preaching to the choir of the importance of the humanities. So, how, based on this survey, what language would you recommend to use to communicate the importance of the humanities to the non-believers, I suppose, of people who don't really see it? Based on this, what do you think is the most effective strategy?
I guess what we try to do to introduce or bring a new set of values to our discussion. There is a talk about like how humanities can make money. We try to add our values to this kind of discussion. Okay. So, yeah, so, did you hear or should I? Yeah. Yeah, oh, okay. So I was saying that I guess we try to add a new set of values to this question of humanities and the importance of humanities rather than just focusing on whether it can make money or not. Yeah. And if Dr. Quigley has anything to add, I would appreciate.
Yeah, really, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like the conversation is often about finances and the economic, return on investment, that kind of thing. Even within that area, you can make a strong case that humanities degrees in education are super valuable. But then what we're adding to it is saying, but is that really all you want to get out of a university education? Is just the paycheck at the end? Even though that's important, we also want to expand, as Sara put it, the concept of value to include emotional well-being, human flourishing, civic engagement, all of the things that we asked about in the questions.
Okay. Yes, this is super interesting. I've had lots of similar kinds of conversations with people across campus, and particularly in STEM fields.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is really interesting, right, is that when we talk to students, not all students, right, some of them are a hard time getting convincing, mostly because of the practical things they're going to have to do in a humanities course. So they're concerned about writing large amounts. They're concerned about reading large amounts. And so it's really the assignments that they're going to be given that they're concerned about and that they don't feel confident in, which I can understand to some degree. Because I don't get super excited about taking a science course or a math course, right? So I also get anxious, which I think we have to have some grace for, right? And recognize that it is a skill. I mean, I think we have to value ourselves and recognize that the things that we do are in fact skills that not everybody has or doesn't necessarily come naturally to everyone, which I think it's left out of the humanities value conversation a lot. But the other thing that's interesting is that a lot of students, we can get them excited and understand the value of what we're doing pretty easily just by giving them concrete examples of things that fail. For example, when you don't take into account these perspectives. But what's a lot harder actually is faculty. And they're the ones that control curriculum, right? And they determine what's important. And in a lot of STEM fields, those technical skills are valued as most important. And as a result, their curriculum is packed full of those things. And there's a pushback about this in STEM, but it's not kind of super widespread yet, right? So that to me seems like the biggest challenge. Not only kind of trying to address the curricular stuff, but also just providing them with examples of alternative curricular structures within their disciplines that actually do center these things and incorporate them. It's not impossible, and students do have good outcomes when you do this. I think the kind of more, we're humanities people, so we tend to make more affective arguments or more kind of analytical arguments, but I don't think that works for them. Right, so I think we have to give them really concrete examples of alternatives that have worked, with clear evidence about the measurable impact, and that seems to go a lot further than otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in Zoom land have a question? Thanks for telling us about the mic problems earlier, by the way. We can now see the chat on the screen, and we see Lillian's comment too. Thanks for that.
Just talk. So my question is kind of building off of Jennifer's comment, which is, who do you see as the audience for this final report? And and this was something I wrote, what's your goal for the project? Who do you want, whose minds do you want to impact?
I guess we are still struggling with the question. It was our question from the first date. But I guess the more it goes, the more we found out people in Virginia Tech itself are interested in this kind of question and working through this question with us. We had a great support from someone like Jenny. So I guess eventually it would be nice if we can impact the Virginia Tech courses and faculties, as Jennifer mentioned. But I don't know, it was just my idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big part of it. And we had some nice kind of small success there. We presented pretty much a version of this presentation to, is it the University General Education Committee? I forget. Yeah, UCCG. And they really enjoyed what they heard, and they suggested that as they start the process of revising pathways, the concepts and what the intentions of each concept are, they will be very interested to use our research, and we're going to continue to do more of it, and keep them informed. So that was just one kind of nice local impact that we can have. And internal university audiences are definitely very important. So I think that's part of the challenge, is just to make sure through the general education system that we can continue to keep humanities courses as a high priority. But then, of course, the dream is that will affect the broader public conversation. And that's going to be harder because, as Nate said earlier, it's easy to preach to the choir, but, trying to persuade other people is a bit more difficult, especially once you get inside the university, as Jennifer said, is difficult enough. But once you get out into the broader public, right now, it's just really difficult to talk about this kind of topic without falling into a kind of polarized predisposition from pretty much everyone who's already made their minds up. So that's really the challenge. We're hoping to do it. We think we have some really interesting characteristics at Virginia Tech that can help us do that, actually. And this is an insight that David Canola really emphasized as we were designing the project to begin with, which is that if you think about Virginia Tech as a university that's mostly known for engineering and computer science, among other things, but that generally humanities takes a back seat at. It's sort of a microcosm of the broader society. So we've got a country and to some degree a world that's hyper-focused on tech at the moment, for better or worse, and a lot of it is for the worse. And so at Virginia Tech, if we can say, look, with our students at Virginia Tech, including the humanities students, but also the engineers and computer scientists, look at the results of our first survey, which is just the first of a lot of research pieces that we'll do, you can see how big an impact the humanities can have on people who are in these tech fields. And so hopefully that translates into broader application beyond the university. Similar kind of thing with the military focus of Virginia Tech. That's another aspect of our university's identity that we were planning. Sara mentioned an NEH grant, which is how this project got started. We were going to apply for an NEH grant on, it was something like the impact and something else of the humanities. It was one of the grants that got pulled before we even were able to apply. We were about 10 days out from applying. But in that grant application, we were planning to really talk up Virginia Tech as this microcosm of a broader society that's tech-focused, that in many ways is military-focused, but has recognized as an institution and a student body the value of the humanities. So long answer to your question, and we, as Sara said, we're still figuring it out, and really we're going to try and push forward on numerous fronts and see where we can get some traction with this. We have a question over here, if you don't mind passing the mic down.
Thank you. Thank you, Zara. Thank you, Paul. Perhaps kind of spinning off of your comment about the audience isn't the people who are already convinced that they don't want to be a part of this, right? But perhaps a larger group of people, some who are on the fence and others who are true believers. I'm curious, what are some exemplary institutions or programs out there that you either are seeing as kind of a guiding star, or that we see here on our campus? We're doing some of those things already. very tiny sort of personal anecdote. The Center for Humanities, I think it was called something like Center for Humanistic Inquiry or something like that at the University of Florida, launched pretty much around the time that I was finishing up my PhD, they have struggled in many senses with all of the nightmare of what's happening in the state of Florida around higher education more generally, and they've sort of seen interest in that center as incredibly precious because of all of sort of the conversations that are happening around who owns the university and who owns sort of critical humanities inquiry. And I see a much different landscape at Virginia Tech, where our curriculum, broadly speaking, is quite robust, even if it is kind of the humanities as sort of the potted plant on the stage kind of thing. But we don't necessarily see a translation of that or an expectation that this Center for Humanities is supposed to be the thing that is protecting the university from whatever set of outside forces. And that's, in a way, a good thing, because that means you can kind of operate under the radar of a lot of national sensationalism. But I'm curious what you both have found in the national landscape. Like, what's an exemplary sort of route? What's a kind of a thing that you don't want this to become like, and so on? Thank you.
I want to talk about the National Humanities Alliance, maybe, as a national organization doing the advocacy work. I have a couple of other ideas.
Yeah, there are some examples, like they maybe did a kind of similar or same project, but with a different focus. Some of them were more focused on ROI, which is like the return of investment, or some of them were focused on higher education and humanities. I guess what we are trying to add to this dialogue and discussion is mostly around, first, undergraduate studies, and we're also trying to consider STEM and non-STEM simultaneously. It's not just humanities centered, but about the vision of the center, I guess Dr. Quigley could tackle. Yeah.
Thank you. So when I took over the center a bit more than a year and a half ago, it was in this context of the big conversation about the value of university education in general, but most especially the humanities. So I realized that this would be potentially one of the most impactful areas that the center as a whole can work in, because I always see the center as supporting what everyone is already doing, around Virginia Tech and the humanities, but maybe picking a couple of areas where the center as an institution can have a bit more of a proactive role. And this really rose to the surface as one of the most important things that we could do over the next few years. In terms of, models or examples, I would point to a program that's housed within the Center for Humanities. It's run by my colleague Rishi Jaitley, who's a distinguished fellow in the center. And hopefully you've all heard about the Leadership in Technology Institute, which is a humanities-based executive leadership certificate aimed primarily at mid-career professionals in the tech industry. And what Rishi has found with the people who have taken the certificate so far, and it's now in its third year, is that they have a hunger, they're people who have succeeded in their chosen field in the tech industry, but they have a hunger for humanities education, and they recognize, and that's why they come to us, that there's a great value for them at this point in their careers being able to contextualize their own lives and experiences in ways that can't happen unless you look to a university, basically, with a place where people come to get that. So that would be one example of, I think, an innovative way to bring people into the humanities, both for their own personal enrichment, but also then hopefully as advocates and missionaries for the cause, who tell people about their experiences and maybe spread the joy of the humanities and what it can bring.
I won't take over, I swear, but I like this a lot, and I care about it a lot, and I think it's so important. I wondered if, so one thing I wondered if you'd looked at, and it's coming out of a conversation I had at another university, is actually advertisement and marketing, right? And the way that the university as a whole talks about ourselves. And so, like, if you watch the ads that show up on ESPN when tech is playing, for example, like, I have a strong physical reaction to those ads, and an emotional one. But I think they're really challenging on a number of levels, and there is different ways that that they can make the case. And I think one thing that we said at this other university was it's one thing to highlight or to advertise the things that are cool, but when you don't actively advertise everything else, then it makes it, you're taking it for granted, but it also makes it seem like it's not important. You might feel like you have to do that, or you don't have to do that because they're the stalwarts, they're the foundations, that's the stuff that's always there, but that has a consequence, right? And just like in terms of examples, some of the things I've told the university through strategic planning and the ARAC and other stuff is that there are examples of polytechnics that manage to take the humanities seriously. And I really think that we should be looking at those because it's not true that Virginia Tech can't do this and can't do it more. So Worcester Polytechnic, for example, and Olin College and others, Georgia Tech even for that matter, and some other places have really centered the humanities and the social sciences much more and made them a much stronger core of their curriculum. And a lot of that's in advertising and marketing, but in other stuff too, right? And we know that it's important. Again, it goes back to the numbers, right? And showing people the stuff that they're saying is just factually incorrect. The data does not support. Humanities students do actually have just as good of employment rates as business students, for example, if not better at this point, right? The salaries make up the salary gap that happens initially really quickly, actually. Employers say in the NACE survey that happens every year that they want the skills that humanities courses bring, right? So I think we just have to be we've not as a field been super straightforward in making those arguments and just calling out the BS. There's some stuff that's just straight up lies, and the business world has really effectively marketed itself in ways that are the complete opposite of what the evidence and data show, right? And I think we need to call that stuff out and put forward a strong argument that shows the opposite. And so that's the real promise of something like this, right? Is that it gets us also further and gives us additional data points to say, no, but really, it's not the thing that you say.
Yeah, and I totally agree that partly it's a communication and marketing problem, and that's something that we, our first task, which Sara has been focused on, is kind of gathering the data, the information. Eliza is gathering more of the oral history stories. And then I honestly think the real challenge will begin then, because then that's when we have to figure out how to get the word out, as we've already discussed, to people who are not already true believers and the choir we're preaching to. So yeah, that's going to be a challenge. I think one really good thing is that our College of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences has already made a great start. For example, the Careers Office, I don't know if any of you have seen on social media, they've been doing a really nice series called Why Liberal Arts, in which they profile alumni from liberal arts subjects and just get them talking about how much they learned at Virginia Tech doing a liberal arts degree and how that has set them up for career success. And so we're going to be building on that. And of course, we're talking about the humanities, but lots of overlap with liberal arts, and we'll probably do some things of our own as well, but definitely building on the start that Claus has already made.
Forgive me. Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. Forgive me. I was late. I had a meeting that was supposed to be 30 minutes that went on for 2 hours with a certain librarian. And I was wondering, and maybe I don't know if you guys touched on this, but I was wondering and also you probably haven't had a lot of time to think about it. But with the fact that the university will be hiring a new president soon, is that scary for the humanities, or is that an opportunity?
Scary.
I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully an opportunity, but scary too. Yeah, I think, we'll see what happens, but it's definitely possible that the humanities will be smiled upon less in the future than they have been so far, so we'll see.
You just can't take it for granted, though. That's the important thing. Yeah.
Anyone on Zoom want to chime in with a question or comment? Looks like we've got a hand raised from Melanie. Do you want to go ahead, Melanie?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry I couldn't be in the room. My meetings were too tight. And I'm like Elliot, I wanted to hear the talk. I was really curious if we could think about the value of the humanities in a slightly different way, and this might help with some of the articulation that Jennifer is pushing towards. So in all of your conversations and thinking about this, I wonder what stands out as robust and successful humanities. Like, what does the humanities look like when it is well supported and loved and valued, right? Not just in terms of return on investment, but in terms of the ways that people seek classes and opportunities and ideas. Mm-hmm. And if we start with that premise, does it change any of the survey questions, the data gathering, the output from the research that you're doing? And I think you've done an excellent job, Sara. So it's just like, how can we think further and perhaps a bit more positively about the excellent work that all of us do? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great point. I guess, yeah, I guess what I really struggled myself with was like this contradiction. We found out when we are talking about humanities, we had to bring up STEMs as well. Like, we should talk about both simultaneously. And and it gets hard because we have a very solid, like, kind of definition of what is a successful STEM is, but we don't have the same thing for humanities. And I guess we tried, like, I didn't talk about it here, but we had like an Excel file of how alumni of humanities ended up in what kind of job, in what kind of like income, and if we work on them in a different way, maybe we can change our perspective as well. Like, it's a great like suggestion. I think we need to revise maybe some of our question and understanding of this project after this seminar. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example of where we can use everybody's help, and that's part of our goal for today is to spread the word about what we're doing, but also hopefully get people involved who have important things to add to the project. So we would love to hear about those successful models so that we can then try and publicize them and build them into the research process as well. So I definitely encourage anyone to get in touch with ideas, whether it's something you think we could be doing as part of the project, or a program or a class or something like that we could profile. That would be really, really helpful. And then on that note as well, we're also specifically looking for a small group of humanities faculty to volunteer to help in a very specific way with the project. So one of the aspects of the project that David Canola has been developing, and we're going to get started on soon, is to actually use the institutional data from Virginia Tech about what students are doing, what spread of classes they're doing, and develop more of a statistical sense of how taking certain types of humanities classes or certain kind of volume of humanities classes can predict their successes or outcomes, or there's a number of things we could look at there. And the starting point, though, is not an easy thing. How do we figure out what is a humanities class? And, how much a class is humanities and how much it's something else. So that's sort of the starting point to the project David's got in mind. And so we're going to be recruiting, again, a small group of humanities faculty who would be willing to work with us to basically try and, it sounds awful, but quantify the amount of humanities in different kinds of classes, come up with a system for doing that. Maybe we will not be able to do it because it sounds quite the challenge, but we want to figure out basically how do we do this kind of data analysis and determine the impact of humanities education. So if you're interested in that, please give me a shout. I'll also be contacting you all as well, by the way. Just by being present here, you've shown your interest in the project. But yeah, that's an example of something we'll be looking for help with. And I guess I'll take this opportunity as well just to see if anybody today has got any thoughts on different strands of the project. So as you've heard, we started out with the survey of pathways, humanities classes, plus the alumni oral history interviews that Eliza's got underway. We're talking about the institutional data analysis that I just referred to. Is there anything else you think we could be doing under this umbrella of the value of the humanities?
Yeah, I don't know if you've been doing this, but I think interviews with the people in Rishi's Institute would be extremely valuable in terms of people who may not have majored in the humanities and find it's not just that I'm sure like they're interested in the humanities, but they see it applicable to their lives. Because one of the things I think of all the time is how like what you learn in college is how to be an adult, right? It's not just about training for a job, right? It's about how to live a life. And so I think talking to, getting some oral histories from the people in Rishi's Institute would be extremely valuable in terms of reaching across the STEM, non-STEM aisle, right? And explaining to engineering deans, like, why the humanities matters. Because, right, they don't care about the effective stuff. So hearing from people in business and, parts of technology firms and understanding why they think it matters would maybe give us a language to talk about that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Go
That's
ahead.
awesome. No, that's awesome. Yeah, you go.
Building on that, I think one of the things that's so crucial is so we tend to use very affective language to talk about what we do, but that doesn't translate to most people, and it's easily dismissed. And I actually don't know that it's actually a good description of what we do in terms of how we do it. I've talked about this in terms of history in particular, right? But I think most people, the vast majority of engineers, if you ask them what is the humanities, they literally cannot tell you. Like, they want to know from us. They're like, so what is it? What do you do? How do you do it? Right? They don't know. And so having a definition of what the humanities is, and I think the National Humanities Alliance sometimes has not provided some very good examples of that. I actually think this is where they're the weakest, is not necessarily providing a coherent definition of what the humanities is and how you do it. And kind of overly general stuff like critical thinking is not effective, right? Because lots of fields can claim that they teach critical thinking. It's too vague. And intercultural perspectives and all that kind of, these are all very vague in general, and lots of people claim that they can do them, right? So the other part of that is about expertise, right? What is it to be an expert in the humanities versus a person who just likes it or cares about it or finds it meaningful? And I think that's also where we end up getting screwed over and over again, right? It happens in history a lot, right? Lots of people are interested in history, and I try to police this in terms of like when people want stuff to cross-list or when they want a class to count for a history requirement, right? And I say, right, so you can use the past and you can use history books, but I can't let a course count for a history requirement for our undergraduate majors if you are not in fact trained as a historian. That there's an expertise involved in doing history at the professional level, at a university level, that's different from just being interested in it. And I think that distinction is so important. And so I guess even with the survey questions, right? Like, could those students take those, like, could they do perspective taking beyond just like relating to their friends? Could they do it in their, in their fields? Could they do it, can they apply it in a professional, practical way? And if they can't, that's okay, but do they understand the limits of their own knowledge and experience and how to engage with experts to kind of complement their own personal skill sets and strengths, right? Like, I think our goal in general education courses, for example, is not to turn them into little experts through one class, right?
Yes.
Our goal is to help them gain an appreciation and respect for different fields and different ways of thinking and different ways of knowing, so that they can understand their own limits and recognize the skills and expertise of others. And then, like, what does it mean to do that then? Right? It's those kinds of things I think that they're really practical, and where we tend to fall down because we don't have specific enough language. Too much about feelings.
Yeah, and I guess it's hard, we start to run into the problem then of the breadth and variety of the humanities. That's part of the challenge for us is, how do we arrive at sharper definitions when there's so much diversity of approaches and methods among the core humanities disciplines. But yeah, really good point. Just to go back to the Leadership and Technology Institute for a moment, we should adopt the rules of the presidential debate. Rishi's name has been invoked twice, and he's on the call on Zoom. No pressure, but if you've got anything you want to add, Rishi, feel free to dive in.
Hey guys, I'm on the road, and so unfortunately can't be there in person or camera, but this has been such a wonderful discussion. I'm struck by so many of the comments from the most recent one on expertise to the questions about how we might engage more fully with the folks in my community, to new ways of going to market. So I won't use this forum to give a long spiel about my mission here at the university, but this has been great, and thank you.
Great, thank you, Rishi. Any other questions, comments? Dana?
Here we go.
Oh, so it's in the text. Maybe you can see it on the screen. Oh yeah, there it is up on the screen. Do you have any thoughts on how to pass on the findings or follow-ups to the folks in admissions? My sense is that so much of this battle is already fought and won or lost before students ever show up on campus. Mm-hmm. I do not. Sarah, I'm guessing you probably don't have any insights into admissions.
I actually do, but just because I talked to Megan recently.
Yeah.
But, sorry, so I talked to Megan Jester not long ago about this because we're working with advisors, and we're doing our first version of a little advisors lunch to provide advisors with more information about what history is and how you do it. But also, we were wanting to do a similar thing with admissions and recruitment, and so I talked to Megan Jester, and she said the college actually already has a sort of showcase for university-level recruiters, and said they had not been featuring departments yet, but would like to, and so they're going to let us kind of be the guinea pigs, I think, and do like a 15-minute presentation. But I would imagine that they would also welcome, a presentation from you guys, and/or working with you to figure out how to identify that. But there is a session where they're doing that, and they're working pretty hard to try to better explain to them. But I think these kinds of practical, giving them really quick, practical, like one-page things that they can easily have with them, or like that's the stuff that matters, because that's the stuff they're going to use, right? We can make the big, complicated argument, but yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, this is a great point, though. Some FaceTime with prospective students would be really good, as well as the admissions professionals. We have a comment from David here, who's had conversations with the VP of Enrollment Management. He's aware of this project and wants to stay informed. That's great. Yeah, that's really good. And I do think that's part of it, is just us within Virginia Tech, even before we think about external audiences, just kind of telling people what we're doing. And the results in some ways are fairly predictable, especially to those of us who teach humanities classes. I think we probably have a pretty good sense of what the results are going to be. And so just making people aware of what we're doing and sharing the results when the time comes, I think is going to be really valuable. Mm-hmm. All right.
Let's talk about Humanities Week.
Yeah, Humanities Week.
Let's talk about Humanities Week. Everybody's supposed to use the hashtag talk about humanities and share your humanities stories.
And that's this week?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a great coincidence.
Yeah.
In case.
You know, and you're the head of the Center for the Humanities.
I know. Well, look, whenever I.
The National Humanities Alliance did not advertise this well.
This is an example of me being so focused on Virginia Tech's Humanities Week. Whenever I hear those two words together, that's all I can think about. In case anyone didn't hear that, the National Humanities Alliance is sponsoring a Let's Talk About Humanities Week this week. So I'm glad we got to talk about humanities this week. I think we always do. Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to add, Sarah, that came up? Or
Thank you
respond
so
to?
much.
Good?
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Thank you all for the questions and comments. We really appreciate the opportunity to share this. Thanks for doing such a great job with the research and the presentation, Sarah. Got
Thank you
some
so much.
applause coming from Zoom land as well.
Thank you.
And just a couple of things from me. One is that, as we mentioned at the beginning, we'll be continuing the project. So, definitely very eager to hear from you. Any additional thoughts, feel free to drop me an email. And hopefully there'll be other opportunities to learn more about our progress. I'm really looking forward to the oral history interviews. We've got two in the bag, I guess, now, and more to come. So it's going to be really exciting after we process the interviews and really get a feel for the results of those. And then more generally, with the Humanities Center, there are several things coming up that I want to briefly tell you about without taking too much of your time. Next week, we'll be back here, same time, same place for the seminar with Phil Yor, who's going to be talking about organizing interracial solidarity in Operation Dixie. We have got a couple of other events coming up this week. On Friday morning, we've got an online workshop on the topic of digital cultural heritage in partnership with the University of York in England. And it's Friday morning, 9:30 to 12. It's all online. There are a lot of people interested in this topic at Virginia Tech and York, so we've actually ended up with 22 presenters. And so instead of like conference presentations, we're basically going to give everyone 4 minutes each to introduce themselves and their research. And the hope is that we'll get some collaborations going with the University of York. So check that out. You can find information on the Center for Humanities website. And then finally, one of the highlights for us of the spring semester is coming up this Sunday afternoon. It's Books at the Brewery at the Eastern Divide. It's from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. And it's a really fun, low-key way of celebrating people who have published humanities-related books this year in the past 12 months or so. Including some of the regulars from our seminar, Andy McCumber, who's going to be there representing his book on rat control, which is a very interesting topic indeed. But we'll also have several other regular members of the seminar, including Alex DeCow and Mauro Caraccioli as well. And there are, I think that it looks like there's going to be 16 or 17 authors in attendance. So it's just a great way to show up. We provide some snacks and some drinks, and you get the opportunity to wander around from table to table and chat with the authors about their books or other things as well, if that's what you want to do. So that's Sunday, 4 to 6 at the Eastern Divide. So it would be great to see you there. All right, let's give one final thanks to Sara
Thank
for
you so
the
much.
presentation.
Thank you for being here.
Wait, I'm going to take a picture and then I'm going to put it up there. Talk about the Humanities Week.
Yeah, we should add